The amount of things diagonals can cast if you look at the far and close distance focusing them will unlock another thing. If it's moving really fast, you'll be able to see it if it's blinking randomly. Sweep the scene. Look at this diagonal. If there's a shadow in there and moving really fast, you'd be able to break it down and see it accurately if you focused on it diagonal. This diagonal, that's a bit harder. We have to do a sweep. How much steam is like chalk that is spread out, if there's a lot of it, is equal to one person's body if it was mummified and then sawdusted. Even more so if you go down on this level and the polarization of these two walls on top and bottom, then you can read between the lines on this diagonal even better. You see it in contrast, moving vertically and with a diagonal focused in, you can see the actual amount of how much steam is protruding. So once again, this is the same tree DNA. If you were just saw up the tree and look at his tiny sawdust, it would have DNA in it equal to, if that happened to someone dehydrated, like if they're mummified. And you mummified sawdust, all of them will be equal to like a whole bunch of trees together. And this tree has been here for years. Even though it's not outside, the same thing has been here. And I've been at the same tree at least for 4 years.
I have zero debt. My house is paid for.
Find this game again.
It was ridiculous, the people that we could give loans to. Yeah.
I've been finding trash on the ground all day, and I thought this was mine because I had dropped trash on the ground before.
Manager, the finance guy.
No hurry at all. No hurry.
We just opened.
So if I wanted to buy a Triumph.
But right after I said something about a crime scene, I was thinking of like dead animal carcasses because I know where they are in this town. And then the light and I saw a shadow on the concrete earlier, and then the church bell rung, so I think that that's all a measurement of a computer program that was like of an AI transfer as a video game that hasn't yet been made, but it's all in a component of the sticks being inside of the vases outside and mimicking what life actually could have been in the DNA structure of the air molecules around it. If there's ever bells on St. Patrick's Day at nighttime from a church, it's a church. Just look like a pot you were stirring. OJ the Juice Man, I mean RIP Juice WRLD, said he was inside of like a wooden pot, and that was like what I'm picturing as an igloo but upside down, and that's what a lot of plants are in. And so I think if you have specific diode measurements, it'll be equal if you put wet stuff around it, like wet soil or oil inside of the wooden thing, the wooden vase, it would be like this. A measurement of it being outside versus it being in the ground outside are two different things, especially if you're considering them being alive or not. And that's how much sap is in its interior versus what's dry. If a person was dry to the point of a dried ice cream, do you think that that would be a kind of a chalk that's equal to sawdust? Yes. So how much DNA of a tree is inside it after it's been killed? If it's still inside of a wooden box, if it has oil on it, I'd say a certain amount. I'd say a certain amount. This set looks like it would be used for a crime scene or a future one if you're trying to see anything bad that happened around this area. This would be something that would be utilized as breaking something bad, like anything that would be gone and left there in the future or anywhere near here. So if you could diffract raindrops good enough to read where it was in its past when it was vapor in the air, you can open up a second dimension where it's just like one dot is equal to an entire screensaver. If it was accurate enough to be a simulator of your entire town, then that would account for every molecule in it over a certain amount of time of wherever you're trying to calculate what you want to see. And that's in a forensic files data gene CRISPR ability. So the difference between some information's read better because I have a marking of top and bottom as one reading in between the lines, and so on this diagonal I can actually focus in. Do you see what I just did? That's a mirror image just on a good diagonal of this actual thing. Since it's not my trash, it means that it can't be a microchip because I lost earbuds with microchips on the ground earlier, and that's a certain ID equal to a stick inside of a pot. Because a stick inside of a pot is the opposite of what an igloo is, and an igloo is something that is used as like a car. If a car was able to move, it's basically a bug UV German vehicle or a Mini Cooper if the igloo is a bit square. So yesterday I recorded like a screen inside of a theater because it was like a text that you could have made on PowerPoint. And I think that that's what was going to be a copyright infringement, let alone from the game I just showed you, because there's less money in board games than it is in movies. So I'm less likely to get a copyright from that.
So she's a salon owner. Their salon did.
But today I saw there was $1 inside of like a canoe. The canoe was the piece of white paper in the dollar, and it kept popping up inside of the dollar. The white piece of paper was the receipt, and it kept like getting stuck inside of $1. That happened twice today, and so that was like a signal of a circuit from a random number generator if that's what occurred each time randomly. And the difference between a pancake and a waffle is like just one indentation, but the burns on it can signify a complete different thing. And that's what burning powder is, if you do it properly. This light keeps flicking on and off, and I think it's like an arrow of time. All light does that out of bulbs, but not in an exact pulsation that had been occurred. But if you slow down the amount of time that this light's turned on versus it being turned off, there's a certain diode moment where it was all canceled, but how many times can you make that in between it being on and off, the brightest time and then the lowest time being ratioed? Right after I said something about a crime scene, I was thinking of like dead animal carcasses because I know where they are in this town. And then the light just flickered and I saw a shadow on the concrete earlier. and then the church bell rung. So I think that that's all a measurement of a computer program that was like of an AI transfer as a video game that hasn't yet been made. But it's all in the component of the sticks being inside of the vases outside and mimicking what life actually could have been in the DNA structure of the air molecules around it. If there's ever bells on St. Patrick's Day at nighttime from a church, it's a church.